Hi, I'm Paul Seal from codeshare.co.uk, and today I want to show you how you can write responsive Markdown in Umbraco. So Markdown is an easy way to get HTML. So you write it in this sort of syntax, and you can do like this would be an H3. Some people might already know what Markdown is. If you don't know what it is, just do a Google, find out what it is. But I really enjoy writing my blog posts using Markdown, and it's only up until recently that I've been able to do it. So I wanted to be able to write Markdown for my blog post, but I also wanted it to stay responsive. So what I really wanted was Markdown in the grid of Umbraco. And that's what I've got here. So if we look at this post, we've got rows of content. So this is written in Markdown. This is another row with two columns. That's Markdown, that's an image. I could still add content as anything else of the other types that I've allowed, rich text again if I wanted to. And then I carry on writing underneath it with Markdown. So this video is going to show you how I got that set up on my website, so that I'm writing Markdown and it's responsive. So the way I did it was I used DocType Grid Editor. Thanks to Janae for recommending it for me, and thanks to it coming up at work, I actually had a reason to use it as well. So I'm using DocType Grid Editor. I'm creating a custom Markdown grid editor item using DocType Grid Editor, and then I'm setting that up so that it renders out properly in the preview in the back office, and also it renders out properly on the front end as well. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to set it up on Isle of Lashes. So the first thing on Isle of Lashes is that it's not actually using the grid. So what we need to do is to set it up to use the grid. For Isle of Lashes website, we're just using this rich text editor on every page. So let's just quickly set up a simple grid. So if we go into Developer tab, Data Types, go to Custom. I want to create a custom data type. Let me just check that I don't already have one in there. No, there's not one in there already, so I'm going to call it Content Grid. Property editor I'm going to use is going to be Grid Layout. I'm going to delete the two column layout and just use a one column layout. I'm going to delete these two that come with it because I've not used them before, so it's okay and safe to delete them. I'm going to add a row configuration of full width. And then I'm going to increase this to 12, and then I'm going to hit submit. So that's my first row, and I'm going to do half and half. So I'm going to increase that to 6 and this one to 6, submit, and then I'm going to do one more and just call it thirds. So just do plus, plus, plus. So now I've got 3 lots of 4. And it says allow all editors, but we'll come back to that one. So if I save that, so that's now a new data type. So on my document type, I want to just allow that. So if I go into my compositions and my basic content controls, what I'm going to do is underneath the main content, I'm just going to add this one. So content grid. So enter the content using the grid rows and columns. I'm going to pick the editor, I'm going to go to reuse, and I'll just do grid. There we go. Content grid, that's the one that I created. Click on submit and save. So that was the first thing, that was adding the grid to Isle of Lashes website. So if we go to content now, and then we go on to one of the news articles, and we click on this. If we go down here, so we do have it, it's in a bit of a weird order. So what we can actually do is change the order of that. So what I would prefer to do is have it always first. So I'll do a reorder on here. I'll make content grid first. And actually I want to make it, yeah, I'll do that as 0, and I will make content be the very first one. but basic content controls will be, if I make it -1, that means that anytime that there are more than one that use the content tab, it will bring it to the front. So if we go back to this, now I've got this here at the top. So add a row. So what I'm going to do is just take, at the moment, I'm just going to copy this content, go to full width, and then I'm going to add a rich text editor, and then I'm going to save and publish. I'm on the local site, so it's fine, I can do that. And then the other thing to do is just go into the template for a news article, go to where it renders out the main content. Oh, by the way, don't use umbraco.field anymore. You want to do model.content.getPropertyValue, but that I'm not going to cover that in this. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is .html.getGridHTML, and I'm going to call it. So I need to pass in the property. So the property name is content grid, and I think that should be it. I might just need to pass in the name. I need to say model.content actually, model.content, and then I say the property alias. So the property alias of this one is content grid. So I can save that. So now if we go to the front end, I'll just undo that change on there, don't need that. Give it a build. If we go to the front end for this website, and actually to the page itself that we're editing, so if I click onto this, the first thing we've done now is enable the grid. And I just copied the content from the rich text field, rich text property that was on the document type, and pasted it into a full width one on the grid. So hopefully, fingers crossed, when this renders, we will have it working properly, and it will just be rendering out the content from the grid where it was previously doing. So it's worked fine. So that's one thing to do. Then the next thing I want to do is enable this Markdown grid editor. So what we can do is go to the solution. I want to install the packages that I need. So I have actually started on the article for this, so it tells you here. So first thing what you want to do, because I'm going to do a post about this as well, I want to install package. So install package our.umbraco.doctype grid editor. So that's going to install that into the web project for me. So that's the first vital ingredient. And then if we look on the list as well, we need MarkdownSharp as well. And that's maintained by Nick Craver from Stack Overflow. So a reliable one. And that's what they use on Stack Overflow themselves. So this has got some instructions about doctype grid editor. So just before we do install MarkdownSharp, no, I'm going to install it first, and we'll come back to this README. Install package MarkdownSharp. Right, that's done. Anyway, so I've installed both of those NuGet packages that we need. Next thing to do now then is it's got some instructions here. To enable this, you must add the following snippet to grid editor's config JSON, and we find that in the config folder, and then we go down to grid editor's config.js, and then we're just going to add this at the bottom here. So let's just go back to it. We'll copy this, and then we'll paste this. We'll put an extra comma there, and then we'll paste this in. So this is saying that we're going to add a grid editor item. Now they've got it in here as doctype, so what I want to call it is Markdown. And then the alias for this, I'm going to call it the alias the same as the document type that I'm going to have to create. So I'm going to call the document type Markdown grid editor. Then the other thing we have to do is allow the document type. So this document type is Markdown grid editor that I'm going to allow. You can add a comma in here and add more, and if you do add more than one, it will give you a drop down to pick which one you want to do. But I think I would prefer to actually just repeat this and have one for each, so it's separate rather than having to pick from a drop down. I've not worked out how to do the name template yet, so I don't know how to set that, but I will find out and probably add it to the blog post. So then we've got the view path is here, so it will look for the view in the folder of views, partials, grid editors, doctype grid editor in there, and then the previews as well. So that, if I show you here, that's how this is being previewed. So it's using this view for the preview, and it uses the view for rendering on the other end as well. And then the other thing is the icon. So the icon for this one is item arrangement, which is the same as doctype. I'm going to change it to be icon code. Save that. If you want to know what the icon names are, you can just Google Umbraco 7 icons, and someone has done a lovely page here which gives you all of them in one go. So if I look for the word code, there's a few, there we go. So we're going to get back this for our icon. So that will give me that. Now that's okay up to this point in terms of configuring this, but we don't have our grid editor, we don't have our document type yet. So let's go into the back office of our website, Isle of Lashes, and let's go to settings, and we're going to create a document type. Now it's not a composition. I'm going to create another folder called grid editors, because I think it is quite specific to be just document types that are used for grid editors, for document type grid editor. I'm going to create a document type without a template, and I'm going to call it, as I said previously, Markdown grid editor. And I'll just add the code icon here. So on this, I'm going to have a content tab, and in this I want to use the Markdown editor. Markdown. I'm going to call the property Markdown. So I'm going to enter a description and just say enter the Markdown for this property. And the add editor, so I want to look for Markdown. So there is a built-in property type, but you do, when you use it for the first time, you will need to create your own custom one. Now I don't like the naming that it gives on here, so I'm going to call it Markdown editor. And do I want to see a preview? I actually don't want to see a preview, so that's fine, so I'll submit that. So I now have this new property, and then I can submit that. So I have a document type that I'm saving in the grid editors folder called Markdown grid editor. It just has one property on it, which is Markdown. I'm going to save that. So that is here. And if you look at the alias, that is the alias that I had to put into here to allow doc types, Markdown grid editor. So now we have that configured. What we also need to do is add the templates. So if we go into the Visual Studio solution and we go into, if we look at this, we need to follow this path down to editors. So if we go to views, partials, grid, editors, and we don't have a folder for doctype grid editor. So let's just copy that name, create a folder, add folder, paste that name in, and there we have it. So then we need to create the file for the preview and for the output. So what we need to do is create a partial view in here. So we do right click, add view, and then we tick that to create as a partial view. So I've got to call it Markdown grid editor, the same as the name of the document type, and I'll save that. I'll add that. I think it's the same as the name as the document type alias. I think that's the convention that we need to follow here. That's what's worked for me previously doing it. I might be wrong, but I think that's how it knows to look for this. And then we just put in here at inherits Umbraco view page. And then in this top bit here, we want to put some code in so that we can so we want to put some code in here so that we can actually read that markdown, get it transformed to HTML for us, and so that it can render properly in the preview and properly on the front end. And in order to do that, we need to use the package that we installed called MarkdownSharp. So we'll save that. And then what we need to do is we need to create a new instance of Markdown class. So var md equals new Markdown. So we've got that, and then what we want to do is get the value from that property on this content item that's being passed to it. So if we do var val equals model.get property value as a type of string, delete those extra brackets, and we're calling it Markdown. So that was the property alias that we put on the doc type. So if we just go back, just to be sure that, so it's this property alias that we're getting there. Then we want to convert that to an HTML string. So we do var HTML string equals md.transform, and then we give it the value. And it's as simple as that. So now we have our HTML string, and then all we need to do then is do at HTML string. Sorry, at raw. HTML.raw. So that will now render our HTML string out for us. So if we copy that, actually we can copy the whole file because the file is relevant for the previews folder and for the output folder as well. So if we just do add new folder and do previews, and remember that's got to be the same as whatever this path is in here. And if I copy this file, Control C, Control V, that now exists in there as well. So we've got the preview and we've got the output. So in theory we've done what we need to do, so let's just rebuild the solution. We'll soon see if we've done anything wrong, but let's rebuild the solution, go to the back office here, and the other thing we need to do is allow it. So even though on the content grid custom property editor that we created, even though it's just taking a while to load because I've just done a rebuild. So even though we have this tick to allow all editors, you might get tripped up by that because it's actually not got it ticked yet. So what we need to do is untick it and then retick it and then submit. And then do the same for each column where you want it to be allowed. And then submit. Because it was allow all before we'd actually created the Markdown grid editor. So submit that and then save. So now it should be allowed to be used on inside the page. So if we go to content and we go to eyelash guide page. So this is it as it was as a rich text editor. And we want to create this differently. So let's create this top half. So I'm going to do add full width, add content, and look, we've got this Markdown grid editor. Click on Markdown, and then is it going to work for us? It doesn't seem to like something. Try it again. No. So there is something wrong. I've obviously done something wrong, so I need to just work out what it is that I've done wrong on here. Have I spelt everything correctly? Markdown grid editor. Markdown grid editor. It's in doctype grid editor, previews. I do have MarkdownSharp installed. Did I have any errors? No errors I need to worry about. Just do a rebuild again, and maybe I need to check the console. So if I do F12, go to console and just see, right, so it's not a function. Umbraco doctype grid editor. Grid editor's doctype grid editor is not a function. So I wonder what the issue is here. So let's just see. Has the app plugin been copied over? Yes, it has. So all of that is there. If it's saying it's not a function, then does that mean that the DLL didn't get copied over? So I'll need to check that next. See, is the DLL there? Because the DLL has got the APIs in there to call. So we'll just watch this as we do it. Alright, okay. So it has worked now. So we can paste this text in here, so it'll all go in as plain paragraphs. Click on done. And then just give it a sec while it converts that markdown into HTML. So that has worked, and then we can just click on this and we can just tart it up a bit with title. Like that. Anyway, so that is the point proven that we can actually create this grid editor. So if we go to info and then we go to here, then fingers crossed on the front end we'll actually have the article rendering out the markdown in there instead of it being from the rich text editor. So did it work? It looks like the exact same article, but I can't see where I put title in. Oh, here we go, title there. So I think the problem was that in the content grid I left that row above. So what I can actually do is delete the row above and just save this row as the only row in there, and then refresh this. So now did that save and publish? Content published. That's really weird. It's like it's cached it. Oh, have I still got the on the view? If I go to the news article, I've still got it rendering out main content. So I need to delete that. That was silly. You probably spotted that when you were watching the video earlier on. You're probably shouting at me, "You've left it in, you idiot." So let's just refresh. That's fine. You would have been right if you were calling me an idiot, because that was slightly idiotic. So there we go. That's the markdown. And then if we wanted to now, we could add extra rows and so on and so on. We could add an image. So just to show, we could do the image here. And then we could do markdown next to it. You know, you get the idea, I'm sure. I've not gone it very complicated in what the possibilities are with Markdown, but I'm not here to train you about Markdown in this. Now the other thing on this is that my markup for the grids and everything, I'm not actually using Bootstrap. So if your website's not using Bootstrap, then when you do this for your website, you just need to have your own custom grid renderer. So if I go into, let me just save and publish that, and I'll just show you what the problem is. So it won't actually go into columns, I believe. Yeah, it's just stuck massive image like that. So let me show you the problem, or at least where to solve it. I'm not going to solve it on this video because that wasn't why I was on the video. But if we go into grid, then we see this here, Bootstrap 3. So I believe the one we're using by default is this Bootstrap 3. So if I was to control and drag, that's the same as doing control V, control C, and then I call this ELL, so it's like the custom grid for this site. Then in theory, what I can do is edit this markdown, this markup. So if one column, otherwise this. So it's always one column for me because I always, on every site I do, I delete the 2 column choice. So I'm going to delete that there. So if it's not one column, it's not going to get rendered out. And then render row, at the moment it's doing it in the grid section, but I just need to find out how I would render the columns on this. So if I go to codeshare.co.uk, I think it was Reflex, that will take me off to the pixelarity. Yes, this was the one that I used for this. And then if we just go into here, this is how it's doing its columns. And we just need to find out where it does its columns. So we have a section in a... So I will need to look into how it's doing its columns on here, on this website. I think there might be an example on the elements page. Yeah, I think it was on these images. So in theory, yeah, we just got col 4. So instead of XS and all of that, maybe I could do a slight cheat and just, instead of it saying col XS and col this, that and the other, I might just be able to quickly cheat and just do col like that. Let's give it a go. So I've just deleted the MD part. So it might be that close to Bootstrap. And the other thing, to get it to pay attention to this ELL, I need to go into here and just do an extra parameter on here and just tell it to use this framework. This is my own framework, ELL. Now if I go back to the web page and refresh this, I'm hoping, I've probably not got much chance of it working, and it doesn't work. But anyway, I'm going to have to tweak and play around with that just to make it work with the grid system for the HTML and CSS framework that I'm using. So it's not using Bootstrap. If it was Bootstrap, it would have been easy. But this one isn't, so I've just got to make it work for that. But we could at least have a look on the front end and just see that it did render out col 6. Yeah, col 6 column and row, but it's just not paying attention to it in terms of the styles and everything that it needs for Scale framework or whatever it is that they use. So that's it. I hope you like it. I hope you can see how easy it is to use DocType Grid Editor and how powerful it is as well. It's like really easy to create your own custom grid editor now and use that in the grid and render it in the grid and have the pretty views as well and create whatever grid editors you want to. Obviously ones that are calling out to APIs and things, you're probably best to do your own custom grid editor, not use the DocType Grid Editor version. But for properties that are known to Umbraco, that are already in there, you may as well just use that. So I just want to say thank you to Janae from Skrit, firstly for inspiring me to do this by giving me the answer even though I didn't know what she was on about at the time, and letting me also write an article for Skrit. And also to Moriama for giving me the opportunity to use it in work. And it's just amazing. And thank you to UMCO for building DocType Grid Editor, probably my favourite thing this month or this quarter, even though it's about 4 or 5 years old. Right, anyway, I'm going to go now. If you do like the video, please click on like, subscribe to my channel, write comments if you've watched it, because I don't know if people are just clicking on it and then going off, but if you like the videos and you want me to do more, maybe suggest topics and things like that. And look out for my new series that's coming up about Umbraco 8 I'm waiting for Umbraco 8.1 to come out because there's some breaking changes in that, first of all. And also, if you do want to show your appreciation and say thanks, maybe just want to buy me a coffee, you can do that by going to codeshare.co.uk/coffee. So yeah, thank you very much. Take care. See you on the next video.